Welcome to another episode of EFRVSNT's Leadership Podcast. My name is Lisa Wilson. I am the CEO here at EFRVSNT. Today, I am joined by Marc Prosser, the CEO and co-founder of Choosing Therapy, as well as the clinical director for Choosing Therapy, Dr. Melissa Boudin. Thank you so much for joining us today. Why don't you get started and tell us a little bit about yourselves and how Choosing Therapy came to be. Marc, if you want to start, that would be great.
Great. Well, I'm going to make something that surprises people at first, but I'm going to just start the interview with it because this is actually the core to why I started Choosing Therapy. I myself am in therapy. I've been in therapy for a while, and I've seen really tremendous personal benefits to it. So I'm a believer, and I'm specifically a believer in talk therapy. So I came to this market as a consumer of therapy services. To be honest, I've not always been as direct and about the fact I was in therapy with people. Only in starting this business have I started to really share this with a lot of people. But over the years, privately, with people I trust and people that I've known, and including business colleagues, I've shared the fact I'm in therapy. And something very particular happened again and again. So I somehow it'd come up and I'd say I'm in therapy and it really didn't work well for me. And they would say to me, I would like to be in therapy. And then they'd say, I even tried to find a therapist. And then, a couple questions later, they're talking about looking for a therapist and typically looking for a therapist on the major therapy directory. And there's one large directory that everyone knows about in the industry. And what happened was they tried to contact 3, 10, and in one case, 20 different therapists. And something shocking happened, at least shocking for someone who's not in the therapy world, in the therapy space. The shocking thing that happened was very few people called them back. Sometimes no one called them back, or sometimes 1 or 2. But in one case, someone called or contacted 20 people and got less than 3 responses. And that's a horrible experience. And there's a lot of research that shows that if you don't get that response, if someone doesn't call you back, you're not going to go on to the next person necessarily, but you're actually, for every day that someone doesn't respond to you, you're less likely to ever have therapy, right? If you're seeking help it's one thing to seek help, but in seeking help when you have therapy, you're admitting and dealing with that you have a problem. If you don't get that support and reinforcement that seeking help is the right thing to do, you're less likely to seek help again. So there's this big problem that people want therapy, but they're not getting the help. And what was really surprising and shocking to me was when I asked people about this problem, why is it so hard to get an appointment with a therapist? People who weren't in the therapy space all said, there's just too few therapists out there. When you investigate this, that's actually not the case. There are about 350,000 licensed therapists in the United States. More than half of them are not in private practice. What are they doing? They're working for social service agencies. They're working in hospitals, schools, correctional facilities, a large number, but they're not in private practice. And so when I was investigating this problem, I asked people, would you like to be in private practice? And in most cases, the answer is yes, but I don't know how. I don't know how to launch a business. I don't know how to acquire patients. I'm not particularly, I would love to be in private practice, but I'm not particularly suited to running a private practice. I did a advanced degree, usually a master's, or in some cases a PhD in counseling and psychology. And then I did 3,000 hours of training under a professional. And the reason I did all this is because I really want to help people. I really want to provide them the best possible care. But I didn't get a single business course. No one trained me how to open a business. No one trained me how to do marketing. So while I'm extremely qualified to provide people with great care, I'm not necessarily qualified or interested in running a business. So Choosing Therapy is about helping those therapists launch their business and helping that patients who are looking for care more easily get that first appointment by basically helping these therapists connect with them. So I just gave you a really long answer, And I will tell you something for the rest of this podcast. I'm a New Yorker, which means I love to interrupt and I love to be interrupted. That's my communication style. So if ever I get too long-winded like this again, please feel free to interject.
You're an active listener. I grew up in Jersey. We're the same way. I completely can relate. And Dr. Boudin, why don't you do your introduction as well?
Sure. So I'm in California. We're not quite the same in terms of interrupting and long-winded. But yes, so I am a licensed clinical psychologist, currently licensed in and living in California. I've worked in the field of mental health now for well over a decade. I have a really diverse background in terms of experience. I've really been on the other side of everything Marc was just talking about, including, so my experience includes over 5 years spent as a program director for 2 really large outpatient mental health programs through the County of Los Angeles, managing that large budget, team of clinical and support staff, hundreds of clients receiving services. There I saw many issues related to access to care, which is one of the things that Choosing Therapy is really trying to work towards improving. That also in that position, it really served to strengthen just my desire to lead and impact and grow the systems and clinicians who are providing mental health care and improve those. So that impacted that. And then most recently, I was in private practice. So I was working with my own clients and working also as a supervising psychologist for clinicians working towards their hours for licensure. But that's really where I gained some experience in building my own business and also what I was good at as a clinician and what I wasn't, or, you know, what I liked and what I had some difficulty with in terms of building that. So I think my experience just overall really lended to, you know, I have the experience as a therapist, as a supervisor and, you know, leader in that space, and also as, you know, an entrepreneur in senses. And that really, that experience made me, I think, a great mix of the things that Choosing Therapy was looking for. And that's really what attracted them to me, but also what attracted me to them, because that's really what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in that space.
Great, great. Yeah, you know, the startup world is the Wild West. And, you know, I cut my teeth in the startup realm. And I know, Marc, you know, you have an extensive background with startups. Why don't you talk a little bit about your experience in startups and how that has benefited where you are now?
Sure. I actually want to start sort of with, I've both experienced with startups and small businesses. And I think I think those terms are often used interchangeably, but in my mind, and often they are meant interchangeably, but in my mind, those are kind of 2 very different things. And I think this is important for this conversation because a therapist is a small business. Choosing Therapy is a startup. Other businesses I've been involved with have both been startups and small businesses. So what's the difference, right? What's the difference? You know, a small business is meant to provide the owners and the employees a really good living. It's not, you know, the goal is not to grow to being publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. The goal is not to make the founders fantastically rich. Really, it's a mechanism for providing really good quality services to the clients and a mechanism for the employees and the owners to have a good lifestyle. A startup is about the dream. It's what, you know, it's what you see on TV shows. It's what, when people, you know, read about Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, that's what a startup, which is, a startup tends to be very, very focused on hyper growth. And I'll even make this, I'll even personalize this example a little bit more, which is the previous business well, I shouldn't say previous business, the business which I'm still a passive owner in, you know, we were very conservative in terms of expanding, and we never took outside money. So anytime that we hired new people, anytime that we expanded, it meant that we had more cash in the bank. So we're limited to our own resources. So that was a natural factor that made the business grow a lot more slowly. In the business that I just started, where Melissa is our clinical director and doing fantastically. And I just have to say, I'm so excited. Melissa's been with the business for less than a month now. But the reason why we hired her is because she is the mental health professional in the business. She brings expertise. She has a PhD. She has 10 years of private practice and clinical experience. She brings a tremendous amount. And why am I making a tangent here is that if we were funding choosing therapy with our own money, we probably couldn't afford to bring someone on of Melissa's caliber for a couple of years from now. We would have had to grow to a certain point. And so when you take other people's money, when you have outside funding, and Choosing Therapy has raised outside funding from some very prestigious venture capitalists, it allows you to have access to resources and allows you to, that you wouldn't have had, and to grow much more quickly. And it basically, to be very blunt, allows you to lose a whole lot of money very early on.
Would you posit then, you know, in the case of all these furloughs and things that are happening now due to COVID, that, you know, some of that outside funding would have maybe saved some of these organizations that were maybe bootstrapping?
Actually, well, first of all, I do, you know, the word furlough, I think, is sort of a misnomer at this point in time, because furlough implies it's a very temporary thing. A lot of these furloughs now potentially can be permanent, and while furlough sounds like a nice word, it means that you're not getting a paycheck. So it's really the functional equivalent of being unemployed. So I think a lot of people are unemployed with the idea that the company would like to hire them back, but there's no guarantees after furlough unless you're maybe with a government agency where things are actually different. But certainly in the private sector, there's a lot of risk. That furlough is not simply a temporary thing, but you're temporarily and you may be permanently. So I think that it's much scarier right now than maybe in the past. So furlough is very scary, and I'd like to say it's being unemployed with the idea that there's a company that wants to hire you.
Yeah.
But getting back to your question, I would actually like to reverse the premise of the question, and I would say really what you're actually seeing now is a lot of companies that might have been successful bootstrapped that are on a course for failure now because they received outside money. Why? Because when you take outside money, they're expecting really strong growth and they're expecting you to spend that money. So you very quickly get spending that has not a direct correlation to your revenues. It really is about funding, getting growth as quickly as possible. So, you're trading effectively the efficiency of capital or the efficiency of how far a dollar goes for the speed at which you can grow at. And so what that does is it creates organizations that are a lot bigger than they would be had they been bootstrapped. So I would say you're saying, so I think that, the PPP loan did help some of those startups and bootstrap businesses, both. But I think now you're going to start seeing all companies, but particularly companies that were funded with VC money, their infrastructures are much larger than they potentially should have. And that makes sense in an environment where you constantly can get more and more money, right? An environment where your one funding round sets you up for another funding round that's bigger, it makes sense to do that. But there's a lot of uncertainty. And that's a word I think we're going to keep going back to again, whether the company will be able to raise money like they would have before this. So to your answer to the question, would you, the question you actually asked was, do you think some of these small businesses would have been better able to deal with the crisis had they had outside money? And the answer to that's very nuanced. It's like, the question is, when did you get that money? If you just got that money, certainly, because it gives you a nest egg, and you have money, and you can opportunistically hire great people, and advertising's cheaper. So if you just got the money, you'd be in a great position. If you were at the end of the money, so I think the question really, so I think it's really a question of how much money do you have in the bank, rather than whether you got outside funding or not outside funding.
Okay, that makes sense.
Did I answer the question the way you wanted?
Yes, you did. You did. Melissa, I want to pivot to, we're talking about the furloughs, and Marc made an excellent point that a lot of those furloughs that should have been temporary have now taken a very deep dive into permanent, unfortunately for a lot of people, or just open-ended, right? We don't know if we can bring you back. From a mental health standpoint, what do you see out there in terms of anxiety, and how can the individual best handle that, the furloughed employee, but then also how can leadership within an organization best help those people that are in the furlough status right now, and then also when they come back?
Yeah, so anxiety, yes. Uncertainty, yes. There's a multi-part question, but to talk just first about how the business owners can handle their employees when they come back. I think, and Mark will speak on this too, but I think best would be having an open line of communication when their employees do, if their employees do come back to work. And even while they're furloughed, just having an open line of communication, being as transparent as possible, letting them know where their employment stands, and what may impact it, what may positively or negatively impact the status of their employment, letting them know what's within their control and what is not. And if there's anything that they could do on their end with helping the business or retaining their employment or coming back to their position. So in terms of, as for the mental health of the furloughed employees, they're going to be, right now, everyone is dealing with a great deal, again, of uncertainty. We are going to hear that term a lot. Compounded stress from changes at home, not only with their employment, right? Changes at home, in their roles at home, in their roles as a parent / teacher / all of the things. They're taking on, new roles. They're also potentially not having the typical healthy outlets that they would have, that they used to have. So, maybe if they're, typical, stress relief was working out, maybe their gym is closed, maybe it was having social interaction. We're very socially isolated right now. That's another thing that's really impacting furloughed employees. Going out for a meal, all of these things that I think we had at one point taken for granted are now really difficult things to access. So I think that it's important to be mindful that those are the things that individuals are going through. It's important to, as a business owner, be clear about the employee's position, future of the company, and reduce, again, I keep using uncertainty, but it's because they have so much of that at home. Whatever you can reduce in terms of the business is going to reduce that stress.
So we have clients who are bringing some of those furloughed employees back. What are some challenges that you see that they might face, or will there be feelings of distrust, feelings of anxiety that they don't know maybe why they were chosen to be furloughed over someone else, and how best can you recommend a business owner to handle some of those challenges?
If you're bringing furloughed workers back, what are you bringing them back to? Are you bringing them back to pay cuts? Are you bringing them back to normal hours? Are you bringing them back temporarily? All those things. I think one of the things is when someone's coming back, why are they coming? Why are they coming back? Because what might happen if they come back, they may not be back in the same job, right? There may be less people at the company. The company may not be outsourcing as much work, and they may have to do other people's jobs. So I think one of the things is I think everyone wants to know when they're being brought back is what is the financial status of the company, and how does that impact the job that I'm doing? The second thing that people want to know is should I is this a permanent this is a permanent decision, or could I be facing furloughs in another few weeks? So all these things have to do with uncertainty. Now, what should a company do in this? The first thing is none of us can control what the economy looks like in 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now. Okay, just like very few of us have, and I certainly don't know what the path of the coronavirus is going to be over the next 3, 6, 12 months, right? So the first thing is accepting much of this information is out of our control. So what is in our control? One is the first thing is what is the company, what is the company's financial status? Does the company have money in the bank? Is the company being profitable? How long can the company sustain things at current things? Now, obviously, different companies have different levels of transparency and comfort with this. But a statement that you can make to someone potentially is, we're going to be fine for the next 3 months, and we'll have to evaluate it then. That's better than saying nothing. Is better than making promises that no one can keep. Or the statement would be, there's certain jobs that are more at risk because, and certain jobs that are not. For example, if your company has a government contract, that job is probably going to be fairly stable. On the other hand, if you're something related to tourism, that's going to be very variable. So I think the thing is, and I think people so I'd say the first thing is be as honest you can, given the fact that there's such uncertainty. The second thing is what does the role contribute to the certainty? In other words, if someone's in sales, sales are down 30%. However, if they were only down 10%, we would be in this situation. In other words, everyone wants to know that they can make an impact, and it's more important than ever saying your job matters to the financial health of the company, and here it does. And that's really actually, to be honest, much easier to do in a small business than it is to do in a large business because every employee makes a big contribution. So underlying the particular employee's contribution to the company. And then the second case, whenever I say second and third, just adjust the number accordingly. But the last case, and this is, when there is uncertainty, you may want to tell employees that there is a lot of uncertainty, so you're fine with them potentially looking for other opportunities. That we recognize that, so there's not the sense of, the message is we expect you to put in your full day, but we also understand that you need to protect your family yourself. So in compromise for us, for you really focusing on your job for the time you're there, like if you need to do an interview, we're not going to tell you, don't hide it, just say, I need to take an interview. Now that's a very unusual situation of trust, but there have been, I personally in my career, not in a crisis situation, not recently, there was someone who had been a long-time employee of mine, and this is 15 years ago. I said, look, the company has evolved and your position is really not needed, okay? Find another job over the next 3 months. And the person did. A month later, found a job, found somewhere else, and they were very, happy that we gave them that. I gave them that extra time. Again, in other words, there's no right answer. But the idea is how do you get people to put their all for when they're there, and at the same time give them an ability to earn immediate income for themselves, and also take steps that can plan for their future.
What I'm hearing you say is have empathy, for their situation, especially, if an employee, obviously if they're not the business owner, for many employees, that is their job. It's not their entire life, right? So I think that it is important that leadership remember that employees might not have all of that at stake the same way that we do as business owners. So what I'm hearing you say is in your background and how you've come up to be a business owner, you have learned that empathy or just knew it inherently, but kept that part of it in the leadership. What are some other elements that you have learned throughout your years of business ownership that you have chosen to keep that have been successful?
It's funny. I think in some ways I want to say I completely agree with you, but in fact, I think I try to turn off my empathy because it's really hard to let people go that you've been working with. In fact, I think the actions that I've described are actually consistent with having empathy. But I just want to say, as a business owner, and I'm sure a lot of the people that you're dealing with are business owners, it's really, really hard, particularly if you've worked with someone for a long time. It's heartbreaking to have to lay people off that you've been working with for a long time. And on the other hand, so I think it's interesting that there is this real challenge, if you are a business owner, of acting in a way which shows that you care about your employees, but at the same time, positioning yourself so you can do what's best for the long-term survival of the business. But you asked a question about what other skills. I think one of the key years ago there was an idea that decisions were just numbers, and I think one of the changes over the last 20, 30 years is that everything has a personal component to it. There's another. The key to sales, in general, is actually understanding the other person. It's funny that we're talking about psychology here, and anyone who's good at managing other people, I shouldn't say that. And I'm going to do broad generalization, which by definition is going to be wrong because it's a broad generalization. But there's generally sort of two ways to manage. One is you create a structure, and people know the structure, and you're basically providing people stability and consistency consistently. And the other thing is managing based on the needs of the individual person and the needs of the company. And those are two very different styles. Both can work. Sometimes a mix of those can work. But for me, a key element of being a business owner or to being a manager, is actually or being a salesperson, which often as a business owner, you are the company's number one salesperson, is actually understanding the other person's point of view. You're very rarely going to ever, and this will maybe be a shocking statement, a controversial statement, very rarely do you ever convince someone that they're wrong in their point of view. When I'm selling, if someone doesn't want, however, what you can do is you can expand what they're thinking about. People believe what they, people have a strong set of beliefs, but you can always give people perspective. You always can share people with your perspective. And so one of the key things is understanding how psychology is important to running a business. And it's important in situations like we're talking about with furloughs, it's important in situations where sales, we're understanding the other person's point of view. And so I'd say one of the key things that I've learned is how integrated psychology is to running a business.
It's very true. That's very true. I definitely agree with that statement. Melissa, what are your thoughts on that as far as the transparency that Marc is talking about and the importance of that in business for your people?
Yeah, I mean, even always it's important, but in particular right now, it's absolutely important because that's a major thing that's impacting people's mental health right now is uncertainty and not knowing about the future in every aspect of their life. It's been turned upside down. So what typically was maybe only stress at work is now stress in every single area. And so if at work you can have somebody take some control, whether it be, whoever the business owner is, and being transparent with you about what you can and can't do, and also what they can and can't do. Having some level of control over your life, and when it seems like literally nothing is within your control, is so important to feeling hope, to feeling some confidence, to feeling, to reducing that stress, to reducing that anxiety. So that transparency and just that communication and forwarding, knowing what you can control as a business owner so that your stress is reduced, focusing on those things, focusing on the things that are working, pivoting when need be. Those things are important, and then transferring those down to the employees as well so that they can also have those same feelings of control and sense of hope in one area of life at least right now.
Yeah. In regard to mental health, how far down the list, and Liz, I'll start with you, and then Marc, I'm sure that you'd like to add to this question as well. How far down the list do you think mental health is for an organization to thrive?
Oh gosh, right now, I mean, I'm going to say again, always it's high, but in particular right now, it's so high. The majority of population is being faced with so many stressors, communal stressors right now. So it's important to be mindful of that, what your employees are potentially dealing with on a daily basis. Having that open line of communication. I know we're kind of saying some of the same things, but it is really important. Your business is not going to survive if you're not being mindful, empathetic, mindful, whatever word you want to use for it, of the experience of your employees, both at work and outside of work right now.
Right.
Sure. I mean, obviously, for a business to be successful, their employees need to be productive. For them, and right now it's very hard for everyone to be productive. Just talking to my friends, not even my employees, right? We're in situations where people are homeschooling, so people who usually have daycare or the kids are going to school or summer camp right now. So you have people who are playing roles that they're not normally used to playing, right? They're waking up early in the morning to take care of the kids, and then working for 8 hours from noon to 8 p.m. And while they're working, their spouse is taking over. So this is an extraordinary time in terms of the amount of energy, effort, and stress. And then at the same time, as Melissa indicates, right, on top of that, you have financial stressors. You may know people that are personally suffering from COVID, so you have interpersonal relationships. So now it's very reasonable to think many of your employees will not necessarily be at their peak productivity now, and that work can become another stress. At the same time, so I think the first thing is just realizing the level of stress, which I think Melissa was talking about. I think at the same time, as a business owner and a manager, I need my employees to be productive, and I think so I think the thing is, having clear expectations of what people need to do, if you can give people opportunities, like if you can cut down someone's workload, this is a good time to cut down people's workload. You may or may not be able to do that. The second thing, so it's just and it may be that that someone, for example, it may be that the best time for someone to work is on the weekends now. So I think one of the things that I would encourage people is, while you may not be able to give them less responsibility to work, you may be able to give them more flexibility to get it done. So recognizing as an employer and as a manager what levers you have. So if someone's better working on the weekends, that's great. If someone says, I can't be around from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., so I'm going to work from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., where you may not normally have been willing to do that, now's the time to consider those things. That said, I want to also go to the other flip side of it. And this is something that Melissa may not agree with me on. We haven't had a thorough discussion about this. But I also, there's a limit to what a company can do in terms of their mental health of their employees and should do. Certainly, if a company ever realizes an employee is suffering from mental illness, they have both moral, ethical, and legal responsibilities to handle that. But there is also a line where companies need to treat employees like an adult, and you need that there's a line where I've seen managers think that they're therapists, and that always backfires. There are times where everyone, particularly now, where many of your employees may be suffering from higher levels of stress, higher levels of anxiety, exaggerated moods. And as a manager, there's probably, in most of those cases, very little you can do about that. So I think it's also very important to understand that if your employees are suffering from certain things at this point in time due to universal circumstances, that you may not be able to do very much about that, and that's not a reflection on you as a manager, you as a business owner, that people are having those things. And sometimes you just have to focus on, are they doing the work that they're supposed to be doing, and let them maybe, and let them sort of work out how they want to handle it. Again, not saying there are certainly ethical, moral, legal responsibilities that a person is exhibiting, certain behaviors that you need to try to get them help. But in general, I just want to say it is always a bad idea for a manager or business owner to be a therapist.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that, giving advice as though you are a therapist. Sometimes many therapists don't even give you advice. Many therapists just let you work through it, and, Melissa, I would like to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah. So, I love that you set me up for I may not agree with you, but I do agree with the fact that a manager should not be a therapist, even if the manager is a therapist. I don't think that they should be your therapist, So I do agree with that. And that you're just mixing, roles that just don't need to be mixed. And in particular, like you were saying, right now, the managers, whether they're therapists or not therapists, business owners, they have their own stressors that they need to be working through and not, trying to help others work through theirs. So I do agree that what they can do, so please don't try to be somebody's therapist who's an employee, but what they can do is the things that we've already talked about: being flexible, being mindful of the situation when you can, clear expectations, open communication, those types of things, but also, encouraging engagement in mental health services if that's what is appropriate, and if you are somebody who openly talks about it, I'm not saying that you need to be, but like Marc openly talks about it, if it's been helpful for you, I think it's okay to tell people that you have, the benefits of it. So encouraging that, in terms of, right now a connection is really missing as well from a lot of workplaces. A lot of people are working remotely, or even if they're working, the whole work environment looks a lot different. So promoting connection in whatever way you can, whether it be virtually, through some type of app or online forum, promoting that workplace culture is going to improve morale and reduce stress as well. So however that looks, it may mean, virtual social staff outings if you used to have them in person, maybe doing something like that virtually, having some type of communication. I know at Choosing Therapy, we're a completely remote company, and we have a great culture via, an app where we all communicate. So I think those things are important as well, and things that they can do in terms of helping their staff with mental health and stress and overwhelm that are related to life right now.
Yeah, I think that's really excellent advice, because, we do have that, while we still have, Zoom and GoToMeeting and some of these apps that allow for that face-to-face, there is still something missing that happens, the synergy that can happen when you are in the room together. So I think it is important to have those meetups, So I love that advice. I think that's great. I do want to give both of you an opportunity. I know, Marc, you touched on some things in the very beginning about choosing therapy and how it came to be. I want to give both of you an opportunity to really kind of shout out all of the great things that are going on within your organization. Because I think that it's wonderful the way that you are not only helping therapists with business, because, I know a lot of therapists in my circles who that's absolutely true. They have no idea how to run a business, and running a practice is very much knowing how to do basic business things. So, go ahead and shout out anything that's going on and how you can best help people.
Sure. So the first thing I'd say is, I'll do the old-fashioned pitch. Visit www.choosingtherapy.com. I think I can spell it, but I'm not going to risk it.
We'll have it posted below this video as well. So if anyone's interested, which I'm sure you will be, go ahead and click the link below.
So why would you visit that site? Well, we're really proud of our content contributors. All our content contributors that touch on mental health are actually licensed therapists. So the content is written by licensed therapists and then reviewed by medical doctors. We're the only mental health site which lives up to that standard. There are a lot of other sites that are far more popular, but they don't have this sort of double, or I should say 2 levels of standard. I was going to say double standard, but that's just the wrong connotation here. They don't. So we're really having people who have hands-on experience dealing with mental health, writing the articles, and then we're making sure the information is accurate by having someone who's a medical doctor, double check everything. So that's something unique. So if you're interested in the treatment for for a particular disorder, you're interested in what are the signs of the disorder, you're interested in how to ask for a mental health day off, we have articles on all those things.
Wow.
So I really encourage, if you're interested in mental health, to come to our site, read our article. What Melissa will talk about a little bit is we have an incredible offering for therapists. We're about to launch our platform at the end of August. So if you're a therapist and you are looking for a platform where you can get new clients and be paid based on your abilities, we're the platform. There are a lot of mental health online platforms out there, but you as a consumer should know a lot of these platforms don't pay their therapists fairly. A lot of times their therapists are making pretty close to minimum wage, and that's one of the reasons why we started this, is we wanted to actually help therapists earn a better living. So when you look at your mental health platforms, think about your mental health professional and making sure that those people who are providing key services are being paid fairly. So on our platform, what's different about our platform for the therapist than other platforms is that the therapist gets to set their own rate. So they can charge a rate based on what they can earn a living for. But I'm going to hand it off. But there's two things I'd love for Melissa to talk about a little bit. One is we have the coolest profile directory for finding therapists that has a really unique value proposition. So I'd love for her to talk about that, and also for her to talk briefly about the different services we provide to therapists.
Absolutely. I'm happy to talk about those things. I've been passionately working on them, like he said, for the past almost a month. It feels like it's been longer. Okay, so our directory. So right now, Mark told you guys a bit about Choosing Therapy, the website, the content. It's incredible. So what we're also in the works in right now is developing a therapist directory that is going to blow every other directory out of the water that exists right now. It will be free, which is incredible for clinicians, for therapists. It'll be for licensed clinicians. And the profiles are complete with pictures, videos, information about your therapist speaking to you about what their ideal client would be, telling you about their experience. It's basically like you're in the room with your therapist for a consultation without them having to actually do a consultation. That is the point of having these really full, complete profiles. So you'll be able to choose the therapist that's right for you. We're really trying to, everything in the beginning that Mark was talking about the difficulty of not just finding a therapist, but actually getting one to call you back, to book an appointment. This directory will not only have that incredible information about it, on it about a therapist, and therapists again will be able to have these profiles on our website for free, but potential clients will be able to come on, find the perfect therapist for them, and through our site they will be able to see live appointment time availability for that particular therapist. So any therapist who has a profile on our site will be able to link their calendar and show just their open appointments to potential clients. So that's something that's not available on other directories. So they'll be able to do that. And then for the clients or the therapists who are using our platform to see clients, which will have that as well, they will be able to book through us through another site, but they'll be able to book with that therapist same day, basically within 12 hours. So not only will the therapist have an amazing profile that shows, that gives you a really great idea of who they are, and if you want to work with them, you'll be able to book a real-time appointment with them through our site. And then on the therapist end, so that's solving the issue of access to services, right? We want to provide easy access to a therapist. So on the therapist end, so, Mark was alluding to, therapists on other sites right now are not being paid what they're worth. So we want to completely reinvent that, and we want to improve access to services and provide really quality care from therapists, while also having clinicians and therapists earn what they're worth, right? So we're going to be helping clinicians or therapists on our site to build their private practices, and all of those things that we mentioned that therapists are not really that great at, the marketing, having to bill clients, having to, even just the bookkeeping, the administrative pieces. Even if you are a therapist and good at that, you probably don't want to be doing it, right? You probably would want to, if you could pay somebody a reasonable amount to do that for you, and to take those hours off of your administrative tasks and put them into client care, which is what we went to school for, right? And what we're here for. If you could take the hours out of that and put them into seeing clients, you would want to do that, right? So that's what Choosing Therapy is going to allow. We're going to be offering basically management services. We're going to be, helping to book schedule your clients, onboard your clients, take care of the paperwork. You're going to come in and you're going to see your clients and focus on the things that you went to school for and that you're passionate about doing. So that's it in a nutshell. Mark, what did I miss?
Excellent.
Anything?
No, I think we did a good job of plugging ourselves.
Okay. We're really excited about it, obviously. This is it's an incredible project. So incredible.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, for your time today, and just for the wealth of knowledge that you've provided to myself, as well as our viewers, just about how to navigate these waters, because none of us have been through it before. So it was very, very interesting. Thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
It was our pleasure.
Wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much for your time.
Hey, before you go, if you really enjoyed that podcast, which I know you did, and you want to learn more about leadership and just keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on inside business and psychology as it pertains to business, go ahead and hit subscribe on our YouTube channel so that way you don't miss a single podcast as we come up. Thanks so much.